For a decade, Beverly Hills, 90210 defined a generation. It wasn't just a TV show, it was a cultural phenomenon that captured the struggles, passions, and drama of growing up in the spotlight of Southern California. But while the series showcased youthful energy and glamorous lives, real-life heartbreak would touch some of the talented stars who brought the iconic characters to life. In this moving tribute, we honor the actors of Beverly Hills, 90210 who have tragically passed away, celebrating their unforgettable performances and reflecting on the sorrowful goodbyes that left fans around the world mourning. Luke Perry was born Coy Luther Perry III on October 11, 1966, in Mansfield, Ohio, a struggling industrial town shadowed by factory smoke and blue-collar hardships. His father was a steelworker, his mother a homemaker. When Luke was just 6, his parents divorced, leaving him caught between a father who drank too much and a mother battling to stay afloat. The emotional abandonment of those early years left him restless, searching for love in faces he couldn't name. Hollywood was his escape, a place where he could reinvent himself. And he did, famously stepping into the role of Dylan McKay on Beverly Hills, 90210 in 1990. With his brooding eyes and James Dean swagger, Dylan wasn't just a character, he was an echo of Luke's real-life demons. A loner. A lost boy. A boy whose father betrayed him. Fans saw the charm, but Luke poured his own heartbreak into Dylan's tortured silences, his addiction arcs, his endless search for meaning. It wasn't acting, it was confession. But fame is a double-edged sword. It promised freedom yet handed him chains. Typecast and adored for his role, Luke spent years trying to prove he was more than a teen idol. Roles came and went, some critical darlings, others forgettable, but none could shake the shadow of Dylan McKay. His deepest frustration came not from critics, but from himself, haunted by the fear that the industry only loved his face, not his soul. Behind the scenes, Luke was gentle, quiet, and self-critical. He fathered 2 children, but his marriage to Rachel Minnie Sharp ended in 2003 after 10 years, quietly and painfully. He once said he wanted to be remembered not as a star, but as a good man, but the gap between those identities gnawed at him. He remained modest, even shy, at odds with the fame that never stopped chasing him. On March 4, 2019, Luke Perry died after suffering a massive stroke. He was only 52. The world mourned a fallen heartthrob, but few saw the complexity of the man behind the icon. At the time of his death, Luke's net worth was estimated at $10 million. Yet no fortune could ever quantify the silent grief he carried, or the aching boy beneath the leather jacket. Joe Tata was born on September 13, 1936, in the Bronx, New York, to a working-class Italian-American family. His father was a vaudeville performer who brought home more frustration than applause, and Joe grew up learning that dreams were fragile, often carried on the backs of invisible men. In the cluttered, narrow streets of his childhood, he learned how to fade into the background, how to listen, how to wait, how to survive. He moved to Los Angeles in pursuit of the spotlight, but unlike those who craved fame, Joe wanted stability. For decades, he played bit parts, bartenders, cops, gas station attendants, faces no one remembered but everyone saw. He made a career out of being dependable. Never flashy, never scandalous. Just steady. Then in 1990, Beverly Hills, 90210 gave him the role that would finally give him a name, Nat Bosicchio. As the gentle owner of the Peach Pit, Joe brought a quiet, grounding warmth to a show built on teen turmoil and Hollywood drama. Nat wasn't flashy, he didn't have dramatic arcs. But he was the constant. A father figure, a confidant, a man who listened when no one else would. Off-screen, Joe was much the same. He took pride in his work, but he remained modest, often retreating from the chaos of fame, content with being the soul of the story rather than its star. Yet even a quiet life is not free from pain. His wife, Susan, died of brain cancer, a loss that shattered the gentle routine he built. Left to raise their daughter Kelly alone, Joe's quiet world became even more silent. In later years, dementia crept in like a thief, slowly erasing the life he had built. His memories, his voice, even his sense of self. Friends and former castmates watched helplessly as the man who had once anchored their youth began to drift. Joe Tada passed away on August 24, 2022, at the age of 85, after a long and painful battle with Alzheimer's disease. His net worth was estimated at $2 million. Modest by Hollywood standards, but Joe never measured his life in dollars. He measured it in kindness, in consistency, in showing up when others didn't. He died with far fewer headlines than many of his co-stars, but perhaps with more grace. A humble man who played a background character, but whose quiet heart held a generation together. Denise Dowse was born on February 21, 1958, in Honolulu, Hawaii, to a military father whose assignments kept the family constantly moving. Her early years were a revolving door of schools and cities, where forming connections meant learning how to say goodbye. She often found comfort in books and theater, clinging to characters when real people felt too temporary. It was in performance that Denise first glimpsed stability, ironically, by stepping into other lives. She carved out a quiet but enduring presence in Hollywood, one forged through consistency rather than scandal. When Beverly Hills, 90,210 cast her as Vice Principal Yvonne Teasley in 1991, Denise brought to the role a rare blend of authority and empathy. Her character didn't have melodramatic arcs or glamorous storylines. But she was essential, a calm voice in the chaos, guiding lost teenagers with stern kindness. Dowse gave her a moral spine and quiet humanity that elevated every scene she touched. Off-screen, Denise was introspective and deeply private. She never chased headlines or let the industry consume her identity. She floated between TV roles with grace, often typecast in professional roles: judges, principals, doctors, positions of wisdom and control, though inside she often battled imposter syndrome and the pressure of being a black actress in a world that still placed limits. Despite her professionalism, true recognition always seemed just out of reach. She gave her heart to the craft but was too often passed over for leading roles, leaving her to wrestle with questions that haunted her in silence. Was she enough? Did they see her? She never married, nor had children. Friends say she poured her love into her work and into mentoring young actors. Her life was measured not in tabloids, but in quiet generosity and the roles that kept her emotionally anchored. In August 2022, Denise fell into a coma caused by severe meningitis. She died just days later, on August 13th, at the age of 64. The news shocked those who had worked with her. Few knew how ill she had become. At the time of her death, her net worth was estimated at $1.5 million, not the wealth of stardom, but the earnings of a woman who never stopped working, never stopped giving. Denise Dowse left behind no scandal, no drama, just dignity. Her life wasn't loud, but it mattered. And for countless viewers, her steady voice still echoes through the halls of West Beverly High, reminding them what strength looks like when it's quiet. David Gale was born on February 27, 1965, in Tampa, Florida, into a middle-class family chasing quiet dreams. He was the second child, often lost between expectations and silence. His parents wanted stability for him, a safe life away from the chaos of ambition. But David was drawn to storytelling, to emotion, to expression. Acting wasn't just a dream, it was a defiance, a way to prove he could be seen. His early career was scattered with hope, commercials, guest spots, small roles that barely paid rent but offered glimpses of validation. Then came Beverly Hills, 90210, and with it, Stuart Carson, the suave, wealthy fiancé of Brenda Walsh. Though his arc was short-lived, David played Stuart with complexity, equal parts charm and quiet desperation, reflecting his own inner unease. On screen, he was the outsider who tried to fit into a world that didn't want him. Off-screen, it wasn't so different. David hoped the role would launch his career, but the phone didn't ring the way he'd imagined. He took other TV parts, Savannah, Port Charles, but nothing stuck. Fame hovered just out of reach. He watched peers rocket to stardom while he quietly faded into the margins. The rejection stung deeply. In interviews, he remained composed, but friends later said he often spoke about feeling invisible, that Hollywood had moved on without ever fully embracing him. He was a private man, especially about his personal life. Rumors of relationships came and went, but he never married, and the absence of family or public companionship gave his later years a haunting stillness. The spotlight never returned, and he stepped back from the industry altogether, disappearing into a life that few ever saw. On January 16, 2024, David Gale died suddenly from complications of cardiac arrest. He was just 58. His passing shocked the small circles who still remembered him. The fans, the former colleagues, the ones who knew how much he had hoped for more. At the time of his death, his estimated net worth was $1 million, modest and quietly earned through sporadic acting and voice work. David's life was a brief flicker in a sky of brighter stars, but in that short glow, he revealed the aching truth of Hollywood. Not every role is remembered, and not every dream survives. But behind the disappointment was a man who once dared to believe he mattered. And for a moment, he did. Jed Allen was born Jed Allen Brown on March 1, 1935, in the gritty heart of New York City. Raised during the tail end of the Great Depression, his early years were shaped by economic struggle and emotional scarcity. His father, a finance clerk, was distant and cold. His mother, overworked and often ill, taught him silence as a form of survival. From a young age, Jed understood how to perform, at home, at school, in life. Faking stability became his armor. He built his career brick by brick, starting on soap operas like Days of Our Lives and Santa Barbara, where he perfected the art of playing men stronger than he felt. But it was his role as Rush Sanders, Steve's polished, wealthy, emotionally unavailable father on Beverly Hills, 90,210, that burned him into the memory of a generation. Jed embodied the contradiction of a man who could give his son everything except affection. And that character, in many ways, was painfully close to home. Behind the camera, Jed's life was lonelier than fans could imagine. Though married to Toby Brown for over 40 years, her death in 2001 shattered the illusion of the picture-perfect family man he often played. Their marriage, while outwardly steady, was not immune to the quiet rot of long silences and emotional retreat. Jed threw himself into work, terrified of the stillness grief had left behind. His 3 sons grew up with a man always halfway gone, present in body, but not always in heart. His career declined quietly in the 2000s. Roles dried up. Calls slowed. Jed, once admired for his commanding presence, found himself drifting into obscurity. He rarely complained, but those closest to him noticed a deep melancholy settling in. He missed the applause. Missed being seen. Jed Allen died on March 9, 2019, just days after his 84th birthday. His estimated net worth at the time was $4 million, a lifetime earned through decades of steady roles, public smiles, and private heartache. In the end, Jed was the kind of actor Hollywood loves to forget, reliable, dignified, quietly wounded. He played fathers, mentors, icons. But inside, he remained the boy from New York who wanted love more than limelight, and never quite figured out how to hold on to either. Nicholas Pryor was born on January 28, 1935, in Baltimore, Maryland, a quiet city where he spent most of his early life feeling like an outsider in his own skin. His parents, firm and intellectual, pushed him toward academia, not art. But Nicholas, introspective and gentle, longed to express the emotions that simmered beneath his carefully composed surface. Acting offered him a kind of freedom he never felt at home, a space to unravel what he couldn't say aloud. His journey into Hollywood was measured, never meteoric. He built a career as a character actor, portraying doctors, professors, fathers, always the man with a composed exterior, rarely the emotional center. In Beverly Hills, 90210, Pryor became Chancellor Milton Arnold, the university's paternal authority figure, guiding students through crises with a calm hand. But behind that calm was a man who knew something about holding the world together even as it quietly splintered inside. Pryor never chased stardom, and as a result, he was often overlooked. He drifted through roles that rarely made headlines but added soul to the stories they touched. What the world didn't see was the toll that invisibility took on him. Always the supporting man, never the lead. He spoke rarely in interviews, preferring privacy, often retreating from the Hollywood spotlight altogether. His pain was not loud, but constant. A slow ache of being near greatness without ever being considered great. Personal life remained a tightly locked box. He was married, though details of his relationship were rarely discussed publicly. He never had children, and his later years were spent in increasing isolation, quietly slipping away from the industry that had once embraced him only when it needed someone solid and forgettable. Age brought him reflection but also regret. Friends say he often wondered whether his life had really left a mark or simply passed through unnoticed. As of recent reports, Nicholas Pryor is still living, now well into his 90s, away from the cameras, out of reach of memory for many who once watched him every week. His net worth is estimated to be around $1 million, a quiet accumulation over decades of reliable but underappreciated work. His legacy is not one of fame, but of restraint, of dignity, of the kind of performance that doesn't scream for attention but stays with you anyway. And perhaps the deepest tragedy of Nicholas Pryor's life is that he played the kind of man everyone respects, but few truly see. Brian Turk was born on May 29, 1969, in North Glen, Colorado, into a working-class family where money was tight and dreams were practical. He was the quiet kid with a towering frame, often misunderstood, often underestimated. He learned early that size could be both armor and prison. People saw the brute strength, not the gentle soul within. Acting, for him, was a revelation, a way to be vulnerable without being judged. His career was modest but persistent. He found work in films like The Lost World, Jurassic Park, and TV shows like Carnival, where he played Gabriel, the strong man with a sensitive heart. But for fans of Beverly Hills 90210, he's remembered, if only briefly, as Tiny, a bodyguard with more heart than menace. It was a cameo, just a blip in the series' long run. But even in those small moments, Turk gave his characters depth. He never phoned it in. Behind the scenes, Brian's life was defined by quiet sacrifice. He married, became a father, and worked not for fame but to provide. Hollywood never rolled out a red carpet for him. Instead, he hustled, taking bit parts to support his family, always just one canceled audition away from financial strain. There were no mansions, no magazine covers, just long hours, small trailers, and constant self-doubt. Then, in 2018, came the cruelest twist. Brian was diagnosed with brain cancer. He fought it with quiet dignity, shielding his young son from the worst of the fear. He didn't broadcast his illness, didn't seek sympathy. Instead, he kept working as long as he could, acting, providing, enduring. As his health declined, his family turned to the public for help, launching a fundraiser to cover mounting medical bills. It was a heartbreaking reminder that not all actors live like stars. Brian Turk died on September 13, 2019, at the age of 49. His estimated net worth was only $500,000, a fragile sum after a lifetime in the industry. He left behind a wife and son, and a legacy not of fame, but of perseverance. He was a giant, yes, but not in the way Hollywood often measures. He was a man who bore the weight of obscurity, illness, and quiet courage. And though his name may fade from scripts and screens, Brian Turk's humanity will linger, an unsung actor who gave everything and asked for nothing. John Lawler was born on June 5, 1941, in Brooklyn, New York, to Irish-American parents who valued discipline and hard work over dreams. His father was a transit worker, his mother a schoolteacher, and in their modest home, art was something you respected from afar, not something you pursued. But even as a boy, John had a stillness to him, a kind of observant melancholy that made him seem older than he was. He watched more than he spoke, listening for meaning in silence. Acting came to him later in life, after years of drifting between jobs. He didn't explode onto the scene. He seeped into it, slowly, carefully. By the time he was cast as Headmaster Bradley in a crossover episode of Beverly Hills 90210, he was already familiar to audiences for his earlier role on The Facts of Life, where he played the stern yet well-meaning Mr. Bradley. These characters, authoritative, emotionally reserved, quietly caring, were close reflections of who he was off-screen, composed, deliberate, and deeply private. But Hollywood was never kind to men like John. He didn't have matinee idol looks or a big personality. He was a character actor, respected, but rarely remembered. As roles thinned in the 1990s, he quietly stepped away from acting. There were no farewell interviews, no big announcements. He simply disappeared from public life, a man who knew when he was no longer being asked to stay. His personal life remained almost entirely out of view. He never married publicly, never had children the media knew of, and lived his later years far from Los Angeles, tucked into rural anonymity. Those who knew him say he loved books, solitude, and the silence that came after a long career spent pretending to be other people. John Lawler died on February 5, 2023, at the age of 81. The news went largely unnoticed. There were no headlines, no retrospectives, just a brief obituary and a handful of social media posts from fans who remembered his quiet strength. His estimated net worth at the time of his death was around $800,000. In the end, John Lawler's life was much like the roles he played, measured, understated, and tinged with sorrow. He was a man whose voice carried authority, but whose own pain remained unspoken. And like many who pass quietly, his absence lingers not in noise, but in the echo of all he left unsaid. Shannon Doherty was born on April 12, 1971, in Memphis, Tennessee, into a family steeped in modest faith and Southern resilience. Her mother worked in beauty salons. Her father was a mortgage consultant. Though her childhood seemed stable on the surface, Shannon grew up craving control over her image, her emotions, her worth. When her family moved to Los Angeles, she was just 7, and the seed of ambition took hold early, growing in the cracks left by emotional insecurity and the fear of being ordinary. Her rise was swift, her talent unmistakable. But it was Beverly Hills, 90210, that changed her life and, in many ways, unmade it. As Brenda Walsh, Shannon played a smart, emotionally intense girl from Minnesota thrust into the plastic world of Beverly Hills. Brenda was sensitive, opinionated, and impulsive, qualities uncannily similar to Shannon herself. The line between actress and character blurred. Fans adored Brenda, the media vilified Shannon. Behind the scenes, tension brewed. Rumors of clashes with castmates, temper flare-ups, and missed call times made her tabloid fodder. But few understood the truth. Shannon was deeply lonely, battling a need to be respected while always feeling like an outsider in a world obsessed with image. Her rebelliousness was often pain in disguise, an armor she wore to protect the fragile self beneath. Her career after 90210 was a rocky road of brief resurgences and painful letdowns. Charmed gave her a second chance, but history repeated itself. Another abrupt departure, more headlines, more whispers. Each setback wounded her deeply, not just professionally, but as a woman desperate to be seen beyond the headlines. Marriage offered no safe harbor. Her first marriage to Ashley Hamilton lasted less than a year. Her second, to Rick Salomon, was annulled. Though she eventually found some stability with photographer Kurt Iswarienko, their relationship became strained as she faced her most harrowing chapter, her battle with cancer. Diagnosed with breast cancer in 2015, and later announcing it had returned as stage 4 in 2020, Shannon faced mortality with raw honesty and remarkable strength. She shared her journey publicly, not for sympathy, but to reclaim her narrative. To finally be seen not as a diva or a fallen star, but as a woman fighting like hell for her life. As of 2024, Shannon continues her cancer battle, her estimated net worth around $5 million. But money has never defined her. What defines her is survival, the kind that leaves scars but teaches you how to breathe through pain. Beneath the controversy, the talent, the drama, there is a woman who only ever wanted to be loved, and to matter, even if the world rarely gave her peace. Which character from Beverly Hills 90210 TV series 1990 to 2000 holds a special place in your heart? How does it make you feel knowing that some of the beloved cast members are no longer with us? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to share them in the comments below. If you've been enjoying this content, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thank you for watching.